Jeremiah Smith is the best player in the country at the high school level in the 2024 class. He's currently committed to Ohio State, but the smoke around that potentially changing is at an all-time level. So much so that Ohio State's wide receiver coach, Brian Hartline, seems to be getting pretty worried about the status of his current top prospect, Jeremiah Smith. Now, this weekend on Twitter, you saw a lot of Miami fans coping with the fact that Florida State beat them for the third straight time. And some of those Miami fans took their anger and their moral victories out on the fact that Keon Coleman only had 24 yards. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. But Brian Hartline took a liking to some of those tweets on social media. Now, he's unliked one of these as of this morning, but he at one time liked both of them. Basically, the premise of the story is that Brendan Sonnone tweeted that Miami had put their freshman cornerback on Keon Coleman, who caught the game-winning touchdown against the Canes. And the response from Canes fans was, well, Keon Coleman only had 24 yards, and that's somehow a moral victory for Miami. But Brian Hartline spent his Monday liking those tweets. Now, it's pretty obvious why. He's trying to say that Florida State's star wide receiver, the guy that Florida State is using to try and recruit Jeremiah Smith by saying, look, you can come here and be like him. Brian Hartline is liking those tweets that are criticizing or casting doubt on how good of a player that Keon Coleman is. Now, obviously, this does not really take into account the full picture of what Keon Coleman did on Saturday. I don't need to tell you guys about the massive punt return that set up that touchdown. I don't need to tell you guys about the defensive pass interferences. We didn't do a ref video this week, and maybe we will, maybe we won't. We'll see. But I don't have to tell you about the times that Keon was pulled down, he was being interfered with on the touchdown catch that he did end up scoring, and obviously he did have what effectively was the game-winning touchdown reception. But he only had 24 yards, and that's what Brian Hartline is focused on this morning and what he was focused on yesterday. But how childish do you have to be to like Miami Hurricanes troll tweets that cast doubt on how good a player is or isn't, especially in a one-game scenario where Keon's impact was so much more than just 24 yards. But the kid has 10 touchdowns receiving this year. He's going to finish in the top 10 all time for Florida State touchdown receptions. And if Florida State can win a few more games, he may finish number one ever. Hartline looks incredibly childish. He looks incredibly petty with this situation. And especially petty when you look at his pinned tweet, which reads, root for people, help them reach their goals, be kind, be happy for others. Life is already hard enough. Help others, lift them up. It won't just change their life, it'll change yours too. Now, that is much different than crapping on or liking tweets that are crapping on a college athlete, a young man that was in the same conference as him just a year ago, a young man that I'm sure he'd love to have on his roster right now, a young man who's probably the first or second best wide receiver in the country. But he doesn't want to lose Jeremiah Smith. And I get that. I wouldn't either. But I don't know that I'd be liking tweets that are dogging another college football athlete to try and accomplish that. Now, Marvin Harrison, Brian Hartline's number one star wide receiver, had just 25 yards when they played Rutgers a few weeks ago. And I don't see Ron Dugans or Mike Norvell or Alex Atkins liking tweets about that. However, Hartline is aware of what's coming. And if you want to know what's coming, I'll give a quick shout out to our Patreon. It's patreon.com/DFNS. That gets you access to our Discord. You can join at any level and get access to our Discord, where we have spoken specifically about what we're hearing with the Jeremiah Smith recruitment. We've put some pretty good details in there, and no one on here is required to join that. But if you'd like a little bit more info, if you'd like to support the show, go to patreon.com/DFNS and get a little bit more inside info on what we're hearing about the Jeremiah Smith recruitment. Now, things took a little bit of a turn and got interesting when a burner account, which I'll show you on the screen here, you can look the burner account up or you can pause this if you want to, but a burner account popped up and started responding to every single tweet that mentioned Brian Hartline, whether they tagged him or not. This account was just created last month, and all this account does is respond to tweets about Brian Hartline. I tried a bunch of different email combinations and couldn't find one specifically that matched, but tried to figure out the email that this account would have belonged to. And I think it's interesting that you've got an account that is defending Hartline like this that was just created. You've got an account using pretty vulgar language in some situations. And again, I don't know that that's Brian Hartline's burner. I can't confirm that by any means. I do believe this is someone close to him or someone in the building who is defending someone they care about, if it's not him himself. Pretty crazy stuff to see it happen. FSU Twitter was on it pretty quickly. This account with no followers and was just created started responding to, again, every single tweet that had anything to do with Brian Hartline or Jeremiah Smith. Go check that out if you've got a little bit of time. Now, where do the Noles stand with Jeremiah Smith? He obviously visited this weekend, had a great time, said he's not taking any more visits until he takes one final one, and that will be to Florida State, and that will be the final visit before signing day, the final weekend before signing day. And the Noles feel like they're doing a really good job here. We've continued to tell you, this is not our first time, that the Noles are in a really good position for Jeremiah Smith. And I think they're continuing to do what they need to do. I put some quotes and I put some updates in our Discord. Again, I would ask you to go join that, patreon.com/DFNS. You can join from anywhere from $3 to $10 to $25 a month, depending on the level that you'd like to support. People ask all the time, how can we support you more? You can go join Patreon. Get access to that inside information in Discord. I'm telling you, it's well worth it. If you don't like it, it's $3. You'll be okay. Go check us out over there. There's a lot of good things happening for Florida State in recruiting. This was a weird one. I'm thankful that we have coaches in Tallahassee that are not liking tweets, hating on other players when they have 25 yards against Rutgers. I'm thankful that we have coaches in Tallahassee that are worried on doing what's right and not melting down because a recruit may or may not end up in the class. We've had kids flip from this 2024 class, and you guys know that, TJ Abrams and others. That happens. Life happens. There is probably someone committed to Florida State right now, and no names. I don't have any inside info on this. But there is probably somebody in Florida State's class right now that is not going to sign with the Noles. That's just how recruiting works. That's just the way that it all goes down. Now, I'd love to be wrong on that. I'd love if somebody on early signing day, Old Takes, exposed me there. But that's how recruiting works. There are players on Miami's commit list right now that will not sign with them. There are players on Florida's commit list right now that will not sign with them. That's just what recruiting is. But there's a big player on Ohio State's commit list that Brian Hartline is melting down and freaking out about not signing with them. And he looks childish. He looks foolish. And I hope that he gets stuffed in a locker. I've got a chest load of memes ready to go if this ends up coming out, if this ends up happening. Go check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/DFNS. Check out our Discord. Make sure you're locked in with the channel. We appreciate you guys. Send a prayer up for Brian Hartline because he is worried out of his mind that the Noles are going to take the best recruit in his class this cycle. Thank you guys for tuning in. Go Noles.